Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to have Shirin Sheppard here. Hi, Shirin. How are you?
Hello. I'm okay, thank you.
And yeah, very well, thanks. Very well. It's not as sunny today, but it's still dry at the moment, so can't complain. We can at least get out and about. You are a local artist based in Bishopbriggs. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I moved here quite recently.
Okay. And you were in the process of starting up art classes at an art place in Lennoxtown, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, so Art World Online, but yeah, my first class pretty much coincided with the lockdown, so
Wow.
it's all on hold for the moment. But
What a shame.
yeah.
Oh. So tell us a wee bit about yourself and how you found out about your love of art and how you decided that this was the career for you.
Okay, well that's a bit of a long story, I suppose. That goes into where I was really small, because art's something that I've absolutely always loved.
Yeah.
So I've been working as a freelance artist now for maybe around 5 years, but my background is actually in biology. So I've got this kind of science art crossover background. So I've done a few things, including scientific illustration, but the subjects that I tend to focus on the most are animals and fantasy artwork, as well as some scientific reconstructions from time to time. I like to do realistic dinosaurs and that kind of thing from time to time.
Okay. Right.
And I work in a variety of media as well. So I do traditional work and digital work. Traditionally, I like to use a lot of graphite pencil, color pencil, watercolors and ink from time to time. And I do a range of styles, really. So from realism through to cartoon work and manga illustration and stuff like that. I tend to go through phases quite a bit as to what I work on the most.
So what was that thing you mentioned about the dinosaurs, the construction? What was that terminology you used?
Oh, the scientific illustration.
Scientific illustration, yes, yeah. Is that what you showed me offline? The picture?
Yeah, I guess I'll show it here as well for everyone else to see.
I'll just try and put you up larger so people can see. So that's
what I'm working on at the moment.
And is that going to be a triceratops or is that something?
So this is a protoceratops.
Right.
Which are a little bit smaller, about the size of a sheep, I think.
Right.
Yeah, so it's quite good fun. I really like drawing extinct cats, so like smilodons, so saber-toothed tiger would be a common name for them.
Right.
But yeah, I think I really like creating realistic fantasy creatures as well. So I guess extinct animals kind of branches into that a little bit, particularly since I did a lot of paleontology at university.
Fantastic. So today you've got a bit of a treat for us. You're going to give us your insider hints and tips in animal illustration.
Yeah, a little bit, as best I can. So this is completely new for me. Usually my teaching style is extremely in person, one-to-one. So it's really, really difficult to kind of transition that into a digital style because I like to have so much interaction with my students. But I'm going to give it a go and see how we do.
Okay.
I decided to go via the digital route rather than the traditional route for this, so you guys at home can see the screen a lot more clearly rather than having a blurry webcam. But I've kind of designed the tips so that you can work at home or just with pencil and paper or whatever you want to use really easily. So you certainly do not need a digital art program and a graphics tablet to follow along.
Thank goodness. Okay, I'm going to share this screen with everybody just now, Shirin. There we go. And that is your lioness that you suggested could be used to draw, and you're going to use that as a template. But anyone can follow these tips and instructions using their favourite pet or any other animal. The same principles apply.
Yep, exactly that. So might be a bit easier if you're following along with the lioness, but this works for anything. It works for people too, what I'm going to say. So if you prefer drawing humans in portraiture, that is also absolutely fine. So the first tip I kind of want to show you guys is that when working with an animal or a person as your subject, the first thing which is really good to do is to break down this subject into simple shapes and deconstruct it and make it not seem so complicated. So what I'm going to kind of do to demonstrate is I'm just going to draw over the top of it just to show you what I mean. You can kind of break this down into a lot of circles. So if you pick up like a kind of a typical how to draw book, you often sort of see these kind of circles and ovals sort of things. And a lot of kind of rectangles as well. So this kind of just helps you break down a complex subject into something which is a bit more manageable. It's also quite common to put these circles around joints, so where there would be an elbow, something that can bend, paws, and so on. I'll put some on the ears as well. So breaking it down in this way, and then, sort of transferring it, just those simple shapes across to where you're going to be drawing. This is a technique which can just start off making something complicated into something simple. As well as that, when we're looking at, say, the features of the head, which I'll probably go just zoom into a little bit, there's other things that we can potentially identify. So the placement of the eyes is a big one. So this is a mistake that people make when drawing humans very frequently, is that they put the eyes much too high up on the head. So I think you see this particularly when children are drawing. They might, if they're drawing, they might put the eyes up here, for example. And that immediately looks kind of strange. So the good thing to remember here is that animals, have a large brain, and that brain needs space. So never forget the forehead, basically. And we can kind of construct that by drawing lines in this circle, which is going to become the face. So in a human, this eye line should be about halfway down the head, which you can kind of see here as well. So I have a second circle for the muzzle, but this circle, the eyes are about halfway down the head. So if you guys are following along at home, either with the drawing of your pet or maybe if you're following the lioness, what I kind of want you to do, if you haven't already, is to just try and draw these circles down, break down your photo into these circles. If it's a printed off photo which you can draw over the top of, just try drawing it over the photo first, sort of get a feel of where those blocks should be. And then afterwards, take your piece of paper and just try and transfer them across. Another thing with the head, if I go back into it, is the center line. So if I draw that center line down, that center line will go directly between the eyes, directly through the nose, through the mouth, slicing the head in two. Again, if you're constructing a human face, this is also a really good way to get the placement of the features.
Yeah, and it also makes sure that you're not missing anything, Shirin, because I think, when you do things and you kind of add it all and you draw it in a oneer, you get down and draw the foot and then you think, oh, I've missed the knee or I've missed the chest somehow.
Yeah, so that's a really good reason why I would suggest doing this sort of method. The better art you get, the less you'll have to rely on, doing a full construction, and you'll be able to sketch quite quickly. But I would say the same rule kind of always applies at any stage of drawing. The thing that you don't want to do is spend 2 hours doing a really, really detailed eye and then find out it's completely the wrong size. Whereas what this allows us to do is we can just get all of the shapes down really fast and then spend as much time as we need to fiddle with them to get everything the way that we want it, everything looking good before any detail is added at all. And if there's anything I can sort of like say to people at home to really take away from this is draw your entire picture in lines and circles, really sketchy, before you add any detail whatsoever, because this will save you so much time. And it will allow you to see your composition and the proportions of what you've drawn really clearly, so you'll be able to identify any mistakes before it becomes a serious problem that's really hard to correct. So going on to back to this center line. For people following at home, you might not be using this lioness, or again, if you want to maybe try your hand at some human portraiture, this center line basically dictates the angle of the face and which direction it's looking at. So if you have this line pretty much going all the way down the middle, this would suggest that the head is facing directly forwards. If, on the other hand, I took this line and I moved it, curving it around this sphere that's going to be the face, then suddenly my lioness is looking more over in this direction, if that makes sense. So here I might have the eyes there, looking straight ahead, equidistant from this center line. But if I move my center line over here, my eye will then be there, and the other one will be a little bunched up in the side, but it's now looking over in this direction. I can even take that to a bit of an extreme. If I ended up with my line all the way at the side of the head, I would then only be able to see one eye, and this would be a profile drawing, and the subject would be looking completely in this direction. So basically think of your head circle as a sphere, put that center line down, put that eye line down, and the positions of those lines will determine the direction that the subject is facing. Conversely, this center line determines whether the angle of the face is looking up or down. If I moved this line and had it lower, the eyes would be lower as a result, and this would angle the head downwards and make it look like it's pointing downwards. Whereas if I took this line and put it up here, the eyes would now be up there, the whole face would shift up, and it would be looking upwards. Do you think that all makes sense to people so far?
Yeah. So if you wanted to change, if you had a drawing, you thought that's perfect, but I would prefer the animal was looking to the right, for example, you can make those changes really by drawing everything out and then moving the center line and moving everything else to in line with that new center line that you've drawn.
Exactly that. So this is why, as I said, getting those lines and circles in so quickly is just a really convenient thing. Because once you've got all these lines and circles in, you might sort of decide, oh, well, I don't actually like that angle of the face. I'll change it. And you can do all of that construction really, quickly before you've, put a lot of detail into the work that, you might not want to make that sort of change. So yeah, highly recommend that.
Okay. Shirin, you've obviously got quite a trained eye for proportion. So is there any tips for, I was just kind of sketching in the legs there, and I found it quite difficult just to kind of figure out what length they should be in relation to the kind of mid-circle, the chest.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any quick ways of doing that?
Yes, 100%, definitely. What I would suggest, it's a little bit hard for me to show over the computer, but you want to take part of the body that's going to be a consistent ruler. So the head of the animal is always a great one to do, particularly, you're drawing people exactly the same. Take your fingers and just put them on the paper, the length of the head. So you can see me on the camera, right?
I'll make you a wee bit bigger. Hang on. There we go.
Right. So on my dinosaur, I'm doing this in mirror. So it's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's
right.
hard.
So you would just take the size of the head, like that, and then with your fingers, and then just measure how many heads across or down.
Okay.
So if you take the photo, on the photo, do the same thing with the head, and then count how many heads down the length of the animal is. Then if you're finding the legs specifically difficult, do it specifically on the legs. How many heads long is it? Mm-hmm. How many heads long is the chest? Do it quite mathematically, and then you won't get it wrong. So in time, you'll be able to kind of just train an eye to what kind of looks right. But even I use this head method all the time. You kind of, like sort of in some art classes, you kind of see people doing the thumb thing.
Yes.
That's what they're doing. They're doing it so that the thumb is the head, and then they're counting how many heads down it is.
Okay.
So that's definitely kind of like the easiest way, I would say, to kind of make sure you're getting your proportions correct.
Okay.
Another method that some people use is the square up method, which is using a grid. I'm personally not a fan of it, but it is still quite a popular method, and this will allow you to get things quite accurately. This involves basically taking your photo and dividing it into squares with a ruler. So, for example, you would just be doing this with a ruler. Oops. Put that over there. You would just be doing this with a ruler, dividing it into squares. Each of these on your photo would be, I don't know, be like an inch squared, or 5 to 10 centimeters squared, something like that, depending on how much detail you want. Then you would, don't want that one. Then you would draw a grid on your piece of paper. It might be the same dimensions, or you might want to draw the picture bigger or smaller, in which case, a 5 centimeter square might become a 10 centimeter square, for example. And then you would look in each of those squares. So if I zoomed in, for example, if you have each of these squares, you would be able to see where each of those squares kind of intersects in relation to each other. And that would allow you to very accurately get your subject. So again,
sorry, Shirin, it kind of depends on what your brain type is, and whether you like a very detailed approach, or whether you're just more of a freehander and you just like to kind of wing it a wee bit.
Absolutely.
The squares, really, somebody probably quite scientific is going to prefer using that method, and somebody maybe a bit more creative is just going to prefer just to kind of judge it by their eye and just write everything down and get it scrolled in as quick as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, the square up method is very popular for people who want a lot of accuracy, and old masters were using grids for centuries. So it is a method people use, but I don't like it because I think it's extremely time consuming to draw these grids. It does give you a very accurate subject because when you're looking at the square, you're breaking it down into just abstract shapes, which are then very easy to copy.
Yeah.
But as I said, I personally don't like it too much, and I don't think it really trains your. Well, it does train your observation, but it doesn't really sort of train your ability to kind of see things as a whole thing that well.
Yeah. I suppose it's useful if you have to scale something up. Like you mentioned, the old masters, they were probably having to, paint a fresco on a massive wall, for example, from quite a small drawing, and it maybe allows them to kind of scale things up a wee bit easier.
Yeah, that is exactly the sort of thing that it's for. So if you want to, scale up a small photo and you want it to be really, really accurate, photo accurate painting, square up method is very good. If you just want to do a bit of freehand work, it's not so much of the thing maybe you would want to spend your time on. But it's always it's a good technique to have in your arsenal. All of these kind of methods do kind of have their place. Oh, my tablet pen has gone a bit awry. Just a sec. So how's your lion coming on so far?
Mine. Let's see this. It's maybe a wee bit elongated, I think. Can you see it?
Yeah, a little bit. Can you put your thing full screen? There we go. Yeah, it's looking really good. So I would say maybe the legs look like they're a little short.
Okay.
So just check, but then the camera distorts things, so it's a bit hard to see.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right with that. The legs are a wee bit short.
But just check with your head measurements again and just see that the amount of heads that have gone into the chest and the amount of heads that have gone into the legs are about the same.
Okay.
So I guess just a little mention as well for people who maybe don't like realism quite as much and maybe want to do a little bit of cartoon stuff. So there we go. I don't know. Can you guys see that on your screen?
What are we looking for?
I've got another window, but I don't think it's wanting to open. Nah. Okay. Never mind. I can do it without it. Basically, if you want to do cartoon work, my recommendation here is never underestimate how important realism is for cartoon work because it is vital. Cartoons exaggerate certain proportions, but those proportions are still in proportion with each other.
Right.
So, for example, I'm just sort of putting in a little sketch of some of the features at the moment. You can see that the eyes are still on this eye line for the moment. If I was to turn this into a cartoon lion, the eyes would still be in the same place. They would still be on that eye line. They would just be bigger. So if I sort of just erase that for a second. So I've now given my lion, some bigger eyes, perhaps.
Yeah.
So now it suddenly looks a bit cartoony, but the proportions are still correct. If I moved the positions of the eyes, if I put them too high, this would look wrong opposed to a cartoon. So if realism isn't kind of your style, still bear in mind that the basic fundamentals are still important to pretty much any style that you'll do. Another thing with cartoon work that tends to be a thing is enlarging the head. So the number of heads to the body tends to go down. you'll notice this quite a bit with drawing humans and cartoon humans in particular. So my mouse is going a little bit weird for some reason. With cartoon humans, you might have a situation where the human is only like maybe 3 or 4 heads tall, whereas in real life, humans are around 7 or 8 heads tall. So my tablet is going a little bit weird. I don't know if it's the oh, there we go. I think technology, it's never reliable.
Well, everyone's working from home, so we've just got to make do, Shirin. So where do we go from here then? If once we've sketched in our proportions and we think we're kind of happy with them, what's the next step?
So once you're happy with your proportions, the next step from there is you want to be removing some of the unnecessary structure lines. So basically getting all of these unnecessary circles out of the way, for example, the ones in the elbow, ones in the knee, the structure lines in the face that you're no longer using. So for example, you're going to have your eyes and stuff there, but you're not really going to need to, actually have the direct lines aside from that. So you can rub them out, you can get rid of them. So that would be the next stage from there. So I'm a bit slow. For some reason, my mouse isn't responding to me very well. It's being all jittery. But yeah, so that would be the next stage from there. After that, that's when you would sort of be adding in any amount of detail that you would like to do. So that is definitely, I guess, worthy of a session in itself beyond how to sort of construct the animal. But as a few tips in terms of getting some really nice looking detail in your work, contrast is everything. So don't shy away from really, really dark tones with your pencil. It's good when you're adding in detail to identify the darkest parts of the photograph. So in the case of this lioness, it would definitely be sort of around the nose, but also down here in the mouth, the eyes, for example. And get those in first and get them in as dark as possible. So that way you have your entire spectrum of shades from the white of the paper through to hopefully the black of the pencil. And that's another thing, I guess, to suggest. I think just, as we're finishing up, I'll give a little bit of materials recommendation. If you don't already, get yourself some different softnesses of pencils. So I like this one. So this one here is an 8B, and probably can't read that, but it's extremely soft. It's always good to have some really, really soft pencils in your arsenal. I also always use a mechanical. Mechanicals are great. I personally use this, which is a Twist Arrays 0.5 lead. Leads come in different widths, from 0.3 to 0.7, I think.
What is a mechanical?
So a mechanical pencil, basically it should run the camera. It has, can you see that?
Right. Okay.
Like it has a replaceable lead inside it. The leads themselves can be different in terms of their softnesses. I'm just going to turn my laptop switch on. One sec.
Okay. And they can be extremely fine then, Shirin?
Yeah. So they can go, I use a 0.5, which I think is perfectly fine. but they can go down to 0.3. You can have different levels of softnesses within your lead as well. Now, why I really like to use a mechanical pencil is not having to sharpen all the time is a massive advantage. But you always want to have a sharp point. And a mechanical pencil, if you're adding a lot of detail, such as a lot of hair, for example, will be able to allow you to get that soft detail in a way that a normal pencil you just would not be able to get a fine enough point. So it's really, really, really good to have a mechanical as well as some other softer pencils. The disadvantage of a mechanical is that you can't get quite as soft leads. So I use a 0.5 millimeter width. I think 4B is the softest you can get. For context, I think they go from 9B, 9 black, which is the softest pencil, up to 9H, which is the hardest pencil. And it's those really soft pencils like the 9Bs, which are going to give you that really deep black, which is going to give you a really wonderful contrast in your drawing. So it's good to have some regular pencils as well to fill in those darker shades. But for a general sketching pencil, I would really recommend having a mechanical. So, yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's been amazing. Thanks very much. I loved that. I loved the scaling it out and, you know, putting in the joints particularly is a big thing for me. I've always struggled drawing the legs. It's always like I miss out the knee. So I think that's just so valuable, just that quick wee trick of sketching everything in really roughly and then kind of smoothing over it. I think that's really useful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm really glad that helped you out.
So you're not online with your classes yet, Shirin. You're hoping to do it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do it. I'm still thinking about what would be the best way to kind of get the information across. So this was just sort of a complete little experiment today.
Really well, it's been fantastic, and we've had loads of viewers on already, and a couple of comments. Hi Karen and hi Anne, saying great tips, and Karen sent the video on to her son. He's doing an art course just now, so great feedback. It's been brilliant. I think you're a fantastic
teacher. And
I'll definitely come along to your art class when it's safe to do so if you have them. It was
thanks so much.
Lennoxtown that you were planning on starting the class, wasn't it?
Yeah. At Art World Online. So yeah, so hopefully they'll be able to start up soon. But I'm really gonna try to do an online thing too.
Yeah, we'll need to wait and see what happens. So if people want to get in touch with you then, Shirin, how do they contact you? What's the best way?
So I have a Facebook and an Instagram. I'm at Shirin Illustration on both. So facebook.com/Shirin Illustration. My email is the same, shirinillustration@gmail.com if people want to get in touch with me like that. Don't have a website yet, but that's something I'm working on. So I'll be putting that on my Facebook, I'm sure, when I've got one up and running.
Social's good for now. So just to kind of finish off, you do commissions, and I've seen recently that you're doing cartoon pictures of people's pets, which look amazing. They look great.
Thank you.
So if anybody fancies something like that, get in touch with Shirin. They look amazing. I think they're on your Facebook page, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all on there, along with pretty much all the other stuff that I do as well.
Okay, brilliant. Well, if everyone can head over to Shirin's page, please, and give her a like and share her first art class. Thanks very much. First online art class. Thanks very much for letting us have it. And please share it so that people can enjoy it, because it's been brilliant. Oh, and here's my lion.
It's great. Well done.
All right for a first attempt, but probably if you had a better student, that would have been better, but I'm not the best student. But thanks so much then, Shirin. Have a lovely afternoon. It's been great talking to you.
You too. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.